And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. I am Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. Over there is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com.
Eat my lunch.
Yeah, he's going to say rocking the Built Bar at the moment. So it's Thursday. It's our prediction show. We got a lot of good stuff coming your way. But before we do, the couple of updates from the Brian Kelly press conference that I believe just wrapped up. His normal Thursday press conference. He had a couple of news and notes that we want to get to. And of course, we need to give the details of the tailgate that is coming on Saturday. So Brian, take it away, sir.
Yeah, so obviously Brian Kelly said today 2 injuries to note. They're not guys that have played yet, but does impact the linebacker, potentially the linebacker depth chart a little bit, and that is that Osita Ekwonu is out for the season with an Achilles injury. Man. That's not surprising, Vince. He was in a boot the first day of camp that you guys were at. He was in a boot. I didn't know it was going to be season ending, but it's not surprising he's out. And then he also said JoJo Johnson's out for the year with a knee injury. It's an ACL injury. He noted that Michael Carmody, which is a little bit more relevant to today's game, Michael Carmody would be out, would be a game time decision on Saturday against Purdue. My hope is that means Tosh Baker starts, and if Michael Carmody's able to play, that he's coming back, like he's coming off the bench. I do not want a redshirt freshman who's just kind of been an pass rusher playing on a hobbled leg against George Karlaftis.
Absolutely.
And Brian Kelly noted that early in the week. I mean, this is not me saying something that the Notre Dame coaches don't know. That's what Brian Kelly said during the week. He said, you don't want a guy that's hobbled trying to block George Karlaftis.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that means that they're working hard to get Tosh Baker ready this week. And then Jared Patterson in the press conference that they did on Tuesday night talked about Tosh at left tackle as if like it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to start. So I would expect to see Tosh at left tackle, and hopefully Carmody's healthy enough to play, because if Tosh struggles, I mean, your next option is Joe Alt, who a lot of people speak highly about, but he's still a true freshman.
But they were speaking highly about him as like he's going to be ready in a couple of years. There, he's ahead of schedule, that kind of thing. But
ahead of schedule. But I mean, I've actually heard some people say that he could help them next year. Like a little bit earlier than expected.
And I get that. I get next year, right? Yeah. But he's not a guy that you really wanted to count on for this year. So
right. So those are the 2 big injury updates from today, and obviously that's the Carmody one is the most pertinent to this weekend's game. But
absolutely,
and then also getting ready for the tailgate this weekend. So we're going to be in the stadium lot. I would encourage you to follow me on Twitter at CoachD178. And I'm going to tweet out where we're at once we get there. There's not like assigned parking. We're in a lot, and just depending on how early we get there. My hope is to get there around 11 o'clock and get set up. Vince is going to come probably about an hour later. Vince probably be there around noon.
I would think noon. That's my guess. Yep.
But I'll be there around 11 o'clock getting set up. A little bit of a change. My parents were going to be coming this weekend to cater the whole thing. My mom was admitted to the hospital on Wednesday night. It's not COVID related. It's something completely different. And she's still in hospital now. And so any prayers would be appreciated for her. It sounds like one of the doctors that's working with her as a Notre Dame grad. So, made me feel a little bit better. But they're not obviously going to be able to make it this weekend. And my mom was going to cater the whole thing. So just a little bit about why that matters. So in my family, whether it's my mom's side in Ohio or my dad's side in Virginia, if you have a wedding or a big event, you are calling my mom and having her come cater your wedding. My mom is a phenomenal cook, and she knows how to cook in bulk. So she had this big spread planned out. She was super bummed. She's all crying about it. She's like, she's not worried about being in the hospital. She's worried about not being able to be at the tailgate this weekend.
Typical mom. Yeah, I get that.
And so she's not going to be there. So we're still going to have food. I've been kind of working on that all day, and I'm going to be working on that all day tonight and tomorrow. We're going to figure out some stuff. I do have some things planned. So we will have food. We will take care of y'all, but you're going to have to wait until the next tailgate to have my mom's phenomenal cooking, which is right now planned for the USC game. But now they're talking about coming back for a second one because my mom feels like she let everybody down, which just says about my mom. Like, no, he didn't let anybody down. But so just want to give that update on the tailgate situation. We're still having it. It's going to be this weekend. We're going to be at Purdue. We'll be in the stadium lot, which is going to be right out in front of the stadium. We'll have a Notre Dame tent, and we'll have the Irish Breakdown flag hanging up. That one right there. we'll be hanging up. So just look for that, and then you'll see an IB hat, and I'll have my
Absolutely.
IB stuff on, and Vince will be rocking his IB stuff. So we'd love to see as many of you as possible.
So will my kid. He'll have his IB stuff on as well, so don't worry.
I'm expecting about 20, 30 people to show up. So, I mean, that'll be kind of fun to just sit and relax and talk ball for a little bit before we go into the stadium and relax and enjoy the game. So, all right. So that is it, Vince. That is it for our updates before we get rocking and rolling.
So this matchup here, this is our prediction show, and we, of course we're going to jump into the keys of the game and all of that fun stuff, but the first thing I want to talk about, Brian, is what's at stake in game 3 for Notre Dame, because I don't know that if 3 weeks ago you and I are having this discussion prior to the Purdue game about what's at stake. Look, Notre Dame is 2-0. We assumed that they would be 2-0, but I don't think that 2-0 has arrived in the manner in which we thought.
Didn't look like the 2-0 we expected.
That is correct. So going into the Purdue game, look, Purdue can beat Notre Dame. They can beat Notre Dame. I mean, the last 2 teams that played Notre Dame could beat Notre Dame. One went into overtime. One was the last second drive to win, right? So
yeah, Purdue
can beat Notre Dame. So my question to you is, what's at stake here in week 3 before Notre Dame even gets to that stretch that everybody's been talking about? We're not even there yet. But what's at stake right now against the Purdue Boilermakers at home?
Well, I mean, obviously, the biggest picture of what's at stake is Notre Dame's playoff chances are at stake. I mean, that's kind of the case every week, right? And we didn't expect this game to be one that. I mean, look, Purdue can knock some people off. Purdue knocked Ohio State out of the playoff in 2018, right, with a beatdown. But that's just not who Purdue is on a normal basis. At least it hasn't been so far.
Right.
This is not a team that can stack up with Notre Dame talent top to bottom. They've got some really good players at the top, but Notre Dame has just as good, if not better, players at the top. This is a game where it's about, number one, big picture, the playoff aspect. But I think the more important thing, there's the macro and the micro. On the micro level, to me, Vince, it's more of what kind of momentum, what kind of attitude, what kind of mentality do you want to create for your football team? And I think that's what this Purdue game is all about. As you get ready for the Wisconsin, I mean, look, here's what comes up after this week. It's Wisconsin, it's Cincinnati, it's Virginia Tech, it's USC, and then it's North Carolina. That is your defining stretch of who you're going to be this season. You would ideally need to go into that stretch with a little bit of momentum and confidence. And I think this team needs a big confidence boost. They did not play with a ton of confidence against Toledo, which was surprising. And I think this is the kind of game where that confidence needs to be built. I think that ultimately is what's at stake. Because even if you win this game, which I expect Notre Dame to do, neither of us are going to pull shockers and pick Purdue to win.
No.
Just kind of giving that away a little bit at the beginning.
Giving it away, man.
It is, the concern for me is that if you come out of this game in similar fashion to what you came out of the last 2 games, you haven't improved as a football team, then you're in a part of the season where you're going to catch a couple L's. And so to me, that's ultimately where this game, what's at stake in this game is what kind of momentum, what kind of identity, what kind of leadership, all those type of things that define your team. What do those look like? And let's go back to 2017 and 2018. 2017, Notre Dame was 1-1. They had a loss. Now they played a much better team than they've played so far. And I remember, Drew, we've talked about this before, but Drew Tranquil after the game says, boy, I feel really bad for the teams we're about to face. And you could see that determination in his eyes. And that team, and I've heard similar stories about, Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey and how they responded to that game. And then after that game, I did feel sorry for the teams that they played for the next 6-7 weeks because Notre Dame destroyed people. I mean, I don't think they played a competitive game until they lost to Miami. I mean, and then in 2018, Notre Dame gets a big win over Michigan, and then they struggled against a really bad Ball State team. Now, it wasn't as close to losing like it was against Toledo, but this Toledo team was also a whole lot better than that Ball State team.
Sure.
And you sit and think, boy, this team just doesn't look right. Well, they righted the ship. They went out the next week against Vanderbilt, looked pretty bad again, lost, won the game, could have lost if the defense doesn't make a stop. It reminded me a lot of the Toledo game. Then you came out against Wake Forest, going on the road against Wake Forest, and that team, again, kind of you had some changes in personnel. You had the quarterback change. That team kind of, from what I'm told, did a little bit of a gut check, Vince, and said, hey, who do you want to be, fellas? And they went out that next week and smacked Wake Forest, went out the next week and destroyed Stanford, and then went on the road and had a 20-plus point victory over Virginia Tech, and then that team became another 12-0 team that went to the playoff. So how is this team going to respond to its adversity early in the season?
Right.
And that ultimately is what Saturday is going to be about for me. You're going into game 3. You're going to basically be done with a quarter of your season after Saturday already. And what do you want to be? And so to me, it's about what kind of attitude do you have? What kind of physicality are we going to see from this football team? What kind of swagger are we going to see from this football team? I still expect mistakes to be made. I still expect the offensive line to have some missed assignments. I don't think they're going to all of a sudden look like the 2017 O-line in 1 week. I think the defense will still probably have a couple mistakes and blown assignments, and those things are going to happen. They need to be less than they've been in recent weeks. But to me, Vince, it's more about the physicality, the fire, the passion, the accountability. That to me is more of what's at stake. If we don't see that, then we have to start coming to grips with the reality that maybe this team doesn't have the leadership that we thought it did. If we do see it on Saturday, regardless of the margin of victory, I'll start feeling a lot better about the direction that this team is headed.
Well, the one word that you used while you were, talking there was identity. And
Go ahead. You wanted to say it while you were going on and on and on. I saw it.
Your soliloquy. Okay. All right. How's that? We'll use a proper term. But no, it's identity. And I don't think this team has an identity yet. And I think they're still searching for it. And I think that this game, they can get a clearer picture as to what that identity is, right? I think the defense is still approaching a point where they're kind of getting an idea of what their identity is. And the offense, look, right now the offensive identity is throw the ball, keep cone upright, and you're going to score points. But they need a clearer identity with the running game. I mean, they need to figure out what that's going to look like. Now, do I expect the run game to look like the pass game right now? I don't. And I don't think that that's going to be the identity of this offense. But in order for this offense to be more than one-dimensional, the run game has to come around, right? So I still think that this team's searching for an identity overall. And I think it's going to be clear after this week, whether that's a positive thing or whether that's a negative thing. I think that we're going to have a better idea of who this team is going, I guess kind of on the road to Chicago next week after this game. I really do. From a offensive play calling standpoint with Tommy Rees, from a defensive full game, can they, shut down teams in the fourth quarter standpoint, all of those different things. I think we're going to get some answers to those moving forward, because now Tommy Rees has 2 games worth of, I don't want to say film because he was obviously there, but 2 games worth of knowing his guys and seeing, okay, what do I need to do to continue to put points on the board with the team that I have assembled right now, right? Now, there's some things, obviously, you can get the O-line better. There's some individual things you can do with the O-line. Mm-hmm. You want them to get better, but they're not going to be a strength of this team. So what does the offensive play calling look like knowing that moving forward? Because we've had 2 games now. 2 games is a trend, right? 1 game is an off thing. 2 games is a trend, in my opinion. He knows what he's got. What's that going to look like, right? Are we going to see some more perimeter screens? Are we going to see, Jack Cohn getting the ball out a little quicker? What does that package look like for Tyler Buckner? All of those things. That's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on. What is this team identity coming out of week 3? Yeah.
And you focus on some of the schematic and execution things. And for me, my focus is going to be on how you play. It's physical. If Notre Dame isn't by far the most physical football team on the game on the field Saturday, that's where I'm going to be concerned. Again, if the offensive line has some technical, and we'll get into this, but if the offensive line has some mistakes, scheme mistakes or technique mistakes and those kind of things, but they battle, they play hard, they fight, they scrap, they claw, they get movement. Right. I'm gonna feel a whole lot better about this offensive line.
No question.
And that's really the big thing for me. The lack of emotion on defense from a lot of guys on Saturday. Like it wasn't that they were like not playing hard. It just was like it just didn't seem like they were playing with a great deal of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the biggest thing for Marcus Freeman to figure out is what can we do to get these group of players playing with the kind of fire that they need to play across the board. Now, there's a guy here. I mean, Jason Adamiola played with fire. I thought J.D. Bertrand did. I thought Cam Hart did early. But it's got to be everybody. And that's going to be the big thing for me.
So, Brian, let's talk matchups, right? Let's talk about some matchups that we're going to be keeping our eye on. Let's start on the Notre Dame offensive side of things. Some offensive matchups that you're going to be looking for in this game that are not necessarily going to decide the outcome, but, they may, depending on what you pick here.
Well, we have an article on the front page of IrishBreakdown.com that Grant Del Vecchio, he's actually a student in Notre Dame. He's writing for us this year. I'm very excited about what the job he's done. He's done a great job so far, but he does our key matchups article, and which is kind of ironic, Vince, because he asked if he could do it. And I'm like, that's not really the kind of thing I normally give up, right? Like you can cover press conferences, but like analyzing the game, that's kind of my thing. I said, well, hey, how about you send me a sample of the Florida State game? This is like a couple weeks before the game, and I'll find out. And I was going to read it and be like, okay, yeah, I got this. And I was like, wow, he did a really good job. Hey, you got it. So he did a really great job. But the first one that he talked about is the first one that we're going to talk about, and that is George Karlaftis against the tackles. I mean, to me, this is the battle.
It's the number one thing.
Yeah, I mean, if this isn't your number one thing, it's like, have you watched Purdue this year? Have you watched Notre Dame this year? That to me is the battle that is going to determine, number one, the success of this offense against Purdue, but number two, is this team got a chance to be successful? Because you're going to face some really good front seven guys against Wisconsin. You're going to face them against Cincinnati, against Virginia Tech. You're going to face one of the best DMs in your schedule, and Drake Jackson when you play USC. And to me, this is going to show us if you can keep George Karlaftis from taking this game over, then I'm going to feel like this offensive line is taking a step. And I want to see them battle because George Karlaftis plays with a motor. I mean, he plays with a motor. And I've heard people say, we only have one sack on the year. If all you're doing is evaluating a team based on the number of sacks they have, then you're not watching games. You're just looking at stats because they are very disruptive. Pardon me. George Karlaftis is very disruptive. I would be willing to bet he has at least 11 or 12 pressures so far this season. And to me, that's a big part of it. So to me, Vince, that's the kind of thing that I want to see is can they handle that matchup? Can they keep him contained? Can they run at him? Can they pass protect him without having to go 7-man protections? Can the tackles one-on-one block him at all? That's the matchup to me, Vince, that could have the biggest impact because if he goes off in this game, it's going to make it very difficult for Notre Dame to consistently put drives together against Purdue. And
they're going to move him around. They're going to put him on both sides. They're going to test both tackles. So we're going to assume that Tosh Baker is the starter on the left side, and that of course Josh Lugg is starting on the right side. Both have had issues with speed rushes, and if Michael Carmody plays, he's had issues with speed rushes too. And the thing about Karlaftis is he can speed rush you and he can power rush you as well. And so he's going to figure out what's the best move against these guys, okay? And he's going to bring it the entire game, start to finish. So if they contain him in the first half, great, but they got to continue to contain him in the second half. And I think that's the bigger thing because he's not going to quit. And, and I'm not saying Notre Dame's players are going to quit. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is he's going to keep bringing it, and he's going to keep bringing it, and he's going to keep bringing it. And if you're not on your game the entire time, that's going to hurt this offense. So, yes, the George Karlaftis matchup is by far the biggest one. And I'll roll it into my next one that I have, Brian, because I
just want to make one more point on that, though, however, Vince, is I'm more concerned about the power rushes. Because of the manner in which – let me explain why. If I'm Purdue's defensive line coach, if I'm Purdue's defensive coordinator, and I'm watching Notre Dame take those vertical pass sets where they're on their heels, I'm driving those guys right into the quarterback every time. That's my thing. Instead of trying to get around them with speed, because Jack Cohn can step in away from speed.
Sure.
Now, and if I don't know if your next matchup is going to be the guards or not, but like if that is part of the next one, which it would be smart if that was your choice. If you're winning that battle, then the speed you can step in, climb the pocket, and get the ball off. What's the worst thing for a quarterback is when you're just looking at it from a quarterback point of view. If you go around my guy, even if you beat him, I can slide and step into the pocket. If you drive my guy right into me, we're done. We're done. And that's been the issue that Notre Dame has had, is just giving up so much ground, being on your heels, and just getting driven right back into the quarterback. And I'm taking my 6'5", 275-pound junior stud defensive end, and I'm going to say, hey, you're going to take that guy's outside shoulder, and you're going to get your arm up in there, and you're just going to drive him right into the quarterback every single time until they stop it. And that's what I would do, because then also that makes it a little easier for him to then get off those blocks and get to the run games, or then to get to the quarterback. So that was why I would focus more on the power moves in this game. And if Notre Dame can handle that power move, then that's a great sign.
See, I actually
progress.
Yeah, no, I actually thought that the tackles handled the power moves a little bit better than the
Toledo's 230-pound ends. Sure,
just saying,
but against Florida State, that wasn't the case.
Fair enough.
And Florida State was a better size. Like Toledo's ends were like 230, 235. Florida's DNs were 270, 275, right? 265 and 275. A little bit more of a size comparison to me. That's why I look at it that way. But yeah.
There we go. I was having some technical difficulties with my microphone. Sorry about that. So, okay, I see what you're saying. I was thinking about the film from last week, but that makes a lot of sense. Those guys were very undersized, and they were able to handle them with the power move. But yeah, my next matchup is clearly the interior, specifically the guards, and what that's going to look like. Because just to piggyback off of what you just said, when you can step into the pocket, you're in good shape. But that involves the interior keeping those guys at bay. And if they get pushed back into the quarterback, it's game over. And if they're getting around the guards, it's game over. So the guards are going to have to step up, and they're going to have to do work against this interior of Purdue. Now, I'm not necessarily worried about the specific players of Purdue. I'm more worried about Notre Dame and what they're doing at the guard position, if that makes sense.
Because yes, you nailed it, Vince. Because Purdue doesn't have D tackles that can from a pure talent standpoint. They're just kind of big guys that take up space. Brandon Dean's a guy that has a little bit of, to me, a quickness to him, but he's not a dominant player. He's a good football player. For me, it's just about the same was true of Toledo's guys. It's can you play hard? Can you execute? Can you stay locked on blocks? Can you get movement at the point of attack? Against a team that really you should be running on. I mean, look, there's no reason not to be able to run on Purdue this weekend. I'm sorry, there just isn't. You should be able to run on Purdue, and I'm not saying they need to run for 275, but you need to be able to run on Purdue. That's just a fact, and so So for me, I need to see them have that success. I need to see them come off the ball, get a push. I need to see them stay on blocks. I need to see them, get movement in the run game, anchor well in the pass game against a bunch of defensive tackles that simply just aren't great players. And to me, that's why this matchup is so important. If the guards can come out, and whether it's just Zeke Correll and Kane Madden again, or whether we see what Brian Kelly talked about, which is the possibility of a rotation at the position, whether it's that, and I would imagine that's going to be Zeke Correll, not Kane Madden. I doubt we see a rotation on Kane Madden's side, although I wouldn't be opposed to it. Whatever the case may be, the guards have to play better. And that's going to be the thing for me, is if the guards can be effective against what's a pretty average group of defensive tackles at Purdue, then to me that's going to be a good sign. And I'm not saying that average as if like I'm attempting to downplay if they have a good game. Well, they played average players. Well, look, that's fine. Do what you're supposed to do against average players. And that's what I'm looking to see is this is a game. This should be a get right game for the guards. And if we don't see improvement at the guard position in this game, then I'm going to be real concerned about that group moving forward.
Well, yeah, because you're 3 games in, and if you're not good to go 3 games in, then again, it's not a one-off. It's now a trend, and that's a problem, right? And so we need to see some improvement from those 2 positions. You just absolutely have to. And so those are my 2. All my matchups have to do with the offensive line. I'm not really worried about matchups anywhere else.
I think the Kevin Austin, Corey Trice matchup is going to be an interesting one. Corey Trice is their best corner. He's 6'3". Look, Kevin Austin, and this is something Grant wrote about in his article. which I said it was really well done. You should check it out. But Corey Trice is 6'3", 215 pounds. It's not very often that Kevin Austin's going to go against a receiver that's bigger than he is. And he's an experienced guy. And so I want to see how Kevin Austin does against that. Because, again, what's the big concern we've had with the receivers? Press coverage, jam, physical corners. Well, that's what he's going to be. So when Kevin Austin is matched up against Corey Trice, I want to see him have success, because if he can't have success against Corey Trice, he's not going to have success against Ahmad Gardner in a couple weeks when they play Cincinnati, right? Sure. So to me, that is a matchup that I'm very intrigued by. Now, the rest of the safeties and the corners and Braden Lindsey against the other, I mean, all those are ones that Notre Dame should be able to handle. And if they shut Kevin Austin down, I don't think it's necessarily going to have a big impact on the game because they have so many other weapons. For me, this matchup is intriguing more from now let's see Kevin Austin go up against a different type of corner, or maybe a little better corner than he's faced the first two games. How does he do? I think he's going to do well, but I need to see it. So that's the other one on offense that I look at.
Okay. Before we move on to our defensive matchups, Brian, we did have a super chat from John Klimek that I wanted to get to. Thanks, John, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. He says, wish I could attend the tailgate, but the boys' football, I'm the coach, is Saturday as well. Go Irish, IB Nation, head out to the tailgate so they can have another. So absolutely, John, and good luck, coach, with your game, man. You'll have to tell us how it goes. He said, and later on, he said, all they do is run RPOs, which I think is awesome. So
nice.
Well done.
Smart
well
man.
done, coach. Well done. I love that.
Smart man.
I absolutely love that. That's good stuff. So, Brian, let's talk about our matchups on the defensive side of the ball. Some interesting matchups here, I would say, mainly for me because, look, if we're going to go with personnel matchups, it's got to be David Bell versus the Irish secondary.
Yes.
I mean, he's by far their best offensive weapon. Excuse me. They want to throw the ball around. They want to get him the ball. They're going to do things to get him the ball. How does Notre Dame's secondary react to that? And really, in addition to that, David Bell's production is not only going to be not hampered, but the secondary is going to be important to that, but also the front seven, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which gets a boost today because one other thing that Brian Kelly talked about today at the press conference is they expect Jordan Patelho to play on Saturday.
Yes, which is
that's
huge.
A big one, and I'm very curious to see how he's going to be used. But specifically to the coverage matchup, Vince, the aspect of this that I'm actually most concerned about is not against the corners, because if I'm Jeff Brom, and one of the matchups that I'm looking forward to seeing is Marcus Freeman against Jeff Brom. This is going to be a great learning experience for Marcus Freeman, and this is going to be a great test because, as you all know, I think Jeff Brom, and honestly, every Division I football coach, every Power 5 football coach I know that I've talked to, and there's a good number of them, they all say Jeff Brom is one of the best offensive minds in the game, if not the best. Now, not everybody thinks he's the best.
Sure.
There's this guy in Norman, Oklahoma that a lot of people think is a pretty smart guy too, but he's one of the best. Some think he is the best. And now he's gonna got 2 games of film of this Marcus Freeman defense. If I'm him, I'm gonna say because this is the thing I like about what they do. They move David Bell all around. Imagine that, right? They take their best players and move them around different spots, create isolation matchups.
That's exactly what Alabama did.
What a crazy concept that is,
right?
But sorry, I couldn't help it. I just had to take that.
But shot. It's true. I mean,
but they're gonna. Anyway. If I'm game plan Notre Dame, I'm saying, hey, look, I'm getting him in the slot. I'm matching him up against the safeties. I'm watching Kyle Hamilton and Houston Griffith struggle to cover, or Kyle Hamilton struggle to cover Toledo's guys. I watched Houston Griffith get beat by some guy at Florida State. I'm going to make them have to cover David Bell. The other thing, too, is if Notre Dame is bringing inside pressures and things like that they like to do with the linebackers, then I've got David Bell in the slot, bam, right behind it, hitting him right behind on blitz beaters and things like that. So that matchup to me is the interesting one. Now, he's going to be outside at times, too, and that's where I want to see Cam Hart and Clarence Lewis handle their business. But ultimately, I think slowing down David Bell is going to be just as much of a Marcus Freeman thing as it's going to be a Notre Dame secondary player thing. How do you prepare for the fact that Jeff Brom is going to move him all over the field? What's your game plan for that? What is your calls when you see him in the slot? What are your calls when you see him outside? Are you able to adjust? Are you able to get some checks where, hey, we've got this called, but if they line up in a formation where we've got David Bell ISO'd against Houston Griffith, we're checking out of that, and I'm having Kyle help over top.
Yeah.
Right. What are you going to do? Because, here's my thing. If you're going to beat me, you're going to beat me with Milton Wright and your tight end and your running backs and Jackson Anthrop and everyone not named David Bell. You're not beating me with David Bell.
Right.
You're not.
Look, the first thing you do as a defensive coordinator and an offensive coordinator is you figure out who the best guy is on the other side of the ball, right? Well, it's not very hard to figure out that David Bell is the best guy on that side of the ball, and you take him away, or at least you try to. I mean, that's football 101 when you're putting together a game plan. Take away what they do best. Well, what they do best is get the ball in the hands of David Bell, right? I mean, I know that sounds real simple, but that's what they're going to have to do, and that's what Marcus Freeman's going to have to do. You have to take away their best weapon. Their best weapon's David Bell. So you're right. Take him away, make somebody else beat you. If somebody else beats you, it's a tip of the cap. Like, hey, okay, we took away your best guy. You beat us with somebody else. Congratulations. But, with this offense, you have to take away David Bell, period. Number 3 can't beat you.
Yeah, cannot. I mean, and if he does, that's on you as a coach. Yes. That's not on Cam Hart. That's not on Clarence Lewis. That's not on Houston Griffith or any of the players that are getting beat. That's on you as a coach.
Right.
If you're going to leave them on an island all day against David Bell and he beats you, that's on you.
Absolutely.
Now, if he beats you a couple times early and you adjust and you don't do that anymore, that's what coaches do, right?
Right.
Maybe you think, hey, I think my guys can cover him on the outside. In the slot, maybe it's a different story, but I think my outside guys can cover him. Okay, you want to go into the game with that plan and see if it works out? Go for it. I have confidence in those players to be able to handle themselves. But if it's not working, what's your adjustments, right? And then do not think that your safeties can cover them. They have to be prepared. Notre Dame has to be prepared for Jeff Brom to do everything in his power to try to get ISOs for his best players. That's what he does. He's great at it. That's what makes his offense work. I wish, as I said in the show the other day, I wish Tommy Rees would study Jeff Brom before he studies any other coach when it comes to play calling, because of there's so many things that they have in common. If he could do things where he uses, if he uses, let me think. If he uses, David. What the point I'm trying to make is. Essentially, Vince, is, I kind of lost my train of thought there, is I need to see how he handles when David Bell moves around. What is your game plan for when he's at different spots? That's going to be the key.
Sure, absolutely.
So if he can do that, then I'm going to feel good about his ability to adjust in games. If he doesn't have a plan for, what do we do when David Bell's in the slot, I'm going to be a little bit concerned. Because if I know that and you know that,
right,
I have to think Marcus Freeman's going to know that.
Absolutely. Well, my other matchup to watch, and this is more of a unit versus a unit, I guess, is Notre Dame's front 7 versus the offensive line and Jack Plummer. Because like I insinuated before when we were talking about David Bell, if they can get pressure, through this offensive line and make Plummer throw off balance, make him rush his throws, he's off platform, whatever term you want to use, where he's not just sitting back there picking you apart, I think is a huge, huge point to this defensive game plan. They have to get Plummer uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a huge matchup. Now, however Marcus Freeman wants to do that, I said front 7 because that's just kind of an overall term. But if they can do it with 4, mm-hmm. and in the occasional 5, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And so that's one of the main matchups. It's not like player versus player per se, but more like unit versus unit. Like that's what I need to see. Plummer can't just sit back there. Bell's too good and Plummer's too good. They'll beat you if you give him enough time, right? Because you can only guard somebody for so long. Think about when you're in the parking lot playing with your buddies, right? When you were a kid. The more time the kid has, if they're not getting blitzed, there's going to be a kid open every time because you have time to juke and do all kinds of other crazy stuff, right? So you can't give him the time that is required to allow David Bell to separate from his defenders. You just can't do it. So got to get pressure on the quarterback.
I mean, to me, control the line of scrimmage. I mean, if we were to say, hey, look, we only have 5 minutes to do this show, so we got to get all this stuff in 5 minutes. Okay, so make it short and sweet and simple. All right, I'd say control the line of scrimmage. Okay, and you just said, what does that mean? What does that look like? Okay, well, how does that manifest? What you just said. Yeah. Jack Plummer never gets comfortable. Make them do what I've seen them do at times, which is you're in the shotgun and you do like a 5 to 7 step drop from the shotgun. Do that. Because if you're going to try to throw the ball from 10 yards behind line of scrimmage with Kyle Hamilton and Cam Hart and those kind of guys, Jack Kaiser, those kind of guys running around the field, you're going to get beat.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the simplest one. Control the line of scrimmage. You do that, and Notre Dame's going to be just fine. And I got some thoughts on that, whether that's going to happen when we get to the prediction time.
I think it's time for keys to the game, Brian.
Yeah.
So you want to do offensive keys first?
Yeah, let's go a couple on offense. Vince, you go ahead and start us off.
Okay, sounds good. I need to see improvement from the offensive line. That's a key for me. And I know that is the one thing we've been talking about all week, and I know that's not very surprising to people, but it still needs to happen. It's still a key to the game. They need to protect Jack Cohn. They need to keep him upright. They can't give up 6 sacks this week. You can't do it. You cannot give up 6 sacks. There's only so much you can hide by bringing in Tyler Buckner, right? You need to keep Jack Cohn upright. If they can do that, they're going to have success. And so I need to see improvement from that offensive line.
So for my keys, and I'm going to bring up John A1 Super Chat because it's kind of it fits right into, by the way, perfect. John A1, thank you for that. It fits right into my keys for the game. He says, happy Thursday, IB. When you say Notre Dame needs to be able to run the ball on Purdue, what does that look like? 4 to 5 yards per carry. Brian Kelly made a comment earlier this week where he talked about, you need to be able to run the ball when you want to and when they know it's coming. And if Notre Dame can't do that against Purdue, there's not many teams left on the schedule they're going to be able to do that against. And so they need to come out to me, John, and it's not so much 4 to 5 yards per carry. It's more so about how they're running. It's more so about, are you being physical? Are you getting movement? If you come out and you're only averaging 4.1 yards per carry because Purdue has to commit 8 players to the box to stop your running game, I don't care, because that means you're probably going to throw for about 400 yards in this game. Right. I remember the game, was it against Pitt last year? Notre Dame averaged like 3-something yards a carry, but they kept hammering it. They were physical at the point of attack. They got movement. They forced Pitt to keep 8-9 guys in the box, and what was the result? 2 huge plays to Ben Skoranek. He and Book throws for over 300 yards. And he had a couple really important scrambles in that game because they were so tight inside. He was able to get outside and scramble. Now, I don't think Jack Cohn will do that, but he can get the checkdowns and get the ball outside to your faster players. The more that Purdue has to condense towards the box because of your run game, the more successful you're going to be with your pass game. So to me, it's not so much a yardage number that I'm looking for. It's not so much a yards per attempt number that I'm looking for, Vince. It's are you establishing the line of scrimmage? That's my number one key. Are you establishing the line of scrimmage, which means physical, which means proper spacing, which means movement. If you're doing those 3 things, the numbers to me will take care of themselves. It's about how they're playing, John. That's my big thing. And then my second key, Vince, is going to also be offensive line related, and I'll bet you it's one of your keys too. It's protect Jack Cohn. Give him time to throw.
Oh yeah,
that's simple as that.
Got to keep him upright. Got to do it.
And there are no other keys. You have better players than Purdue.
Yeah,
across the board with one exception, right? And that's tackles against ends. And I'd be concerned about George Karlaftis in this matchup if Robert Hainsey and Liam Eichenberg were coming back. Now, I'd predict Notre Dame to win that battle, but it'd be a battle. So I'm definitely concerned about it with younger players and Josh Lugg and those kind of guys. But as long as they can hold their own and the rest of the line wins matchups where they're – I've actually had people tell me that there are some claiming that, Notre Dame just doesn't have the talent of past years. Okay, fine. Let's accept that premise. Are you telling me Notre Dame's offensive linemen aren't more talented than Toledo's defensive line? So it's clearly a Notre Dame problem. It's not an opponent, it's not a talent problem. So to me, this is the game you get right. This is the get right game for the Notre Dame offensive line. Give Jack Cohn time, be physical to point of attack. Beyond that, I have no other keys. The rest of it, I have confidence that Tom Reese is going to have a good game plan. I have confidence that Jack Cohn's going to execute if he gets the time. I have confidence that the Notre Dame running backs are going to do their business if they just give them. They don't need that much room. Just give them a little bit of room. I have great confidence in all those things. To me, it comes down to up front. If the offensive line plays well, not even like, oh my gosh, out of their mind, just have a good football game.
Just be average.
If they do that, this offense is going to move the ball and score a lot of points.
Sure.
It's as simple as that.
Agreed.
It's about as easy of a keys to the game as I'm ever going to have. I mean, it really is.
I had a couple more, but at the same time,
Give them.
I had, Tommy Reese be creative, right? But I have faith that he's going to do that. I do. I have faith that he's going to do that. And then I have continue to push the ball down the field. Continue to be aggressive. Don't, just because you're worried about Jack Cohn going down, it doesn't all have to be horizontal. It doesn't all have to be get the ball out quick. Push it downfield if you can. Keep going after it. Make Braden Lindsey a part of your game plan. Get the ball deep. Test these corners, because I like Notre Dame's receivers versus Purdue's corners.
I like the one you said, and it is going to be in my written keys to the game tomorrow. So that is, I want to see a Braden Lindsey package in this game. I want to see a game plan that says we got to get Braden Lindsey going.
Yes, he's getting frustrated, and that's only going to last so long. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think that's a great one, Vince. That's a great one. Yep.
Okay, let's move to our defensive keys to the game. Brian, why don't you hit leadoff for me?
I think the biggest key is going to be up front. And again, this is going to sound like a broken record when it comes to the Notre Dame defense, but the defensive line has to control the action. You have to make them one-dimensional. Because if you can make them one-dimensional, I'm fully confident that they've got the athleticism up front to harass Purdue. Now, here's the difference between the two matchups. We had someone who watches the channel was complaining about the fact that we ignored the fact that Purdue has a bad offensive line. We didn't ignore it.
We talked about that.
We talked about it quite a bit.
Right.
What I will say, however, is, to his point, here's the difference. Notre Dame's offensive line is not playing well. And this is the thing that we talked about in a previous show. Notre Dame's offensive line is playing poorly, but they're not playing to their potential. Purdue's offensive line is not playing well simply because they're just not good. And that's where this matchup needs to be. They've got one player, to me, that I view as an NFL player. That's Gus Hartwig at center, and that's even like a mid to late round guy. The rest of those guys are just not athletic enough to be able to block Notre Dame's players. And now you have Jordan Patelho as sort of an off the bench speed weapon, which is the one thing you've talked about that they lack. I'm seeing a big day from Foskey. I'm seeing a big day from Jason Adamiola. I think Myron Tungvaloa is just starting to scratch the surface. He had such a good jump from game 1 to game 2, despite the fact after the game he had to hop on a Zoom call to be with his family as they buried his father. That's what was on that kid's heart on Saturday.
Right.
I just love that kid. I'm sorry. I just love that kid. But he's only going to get better at the big end. I think this defensive line will dominate, but that's the biggest key, is dominate. That's my number one goal.
No, it makes sense. Mine were a little more specific, I suppose. Or this one's not. The first one is continue to improve, right? We saw improvement from game 1 to game 2. I need to see more improvement from game 2 to game 3. So they have to continue that trend. The arrow's pointing up. I have faith that that's going to happen, but they absolutely have to continue to improve. They can't, it's the old adage, if you stay the same, you're not getting better. You're not getting worse. You're just staying the same. That can't happen, right? They have to get better. So that's my number one. My number 2, we already talked about. You have to contain David Bell. I don't think you're going to be able to stop him completely, but you have to contain him. You can't let him continuously beat you, right? He may get loose for one. Okay, there's your one. Congratulations. Put it on your highlight reel, right? But you can't let him beat you consistently.
Right.
That's
he's going to get his numbers. I mean, Jeff Brom is too creative.
They're going to force the ball to him. I mean, because he's their best player.
Right. But they can't be touched. They can't be scoring plays. Right. They can't be field flipping plays. That's the key. When he gets the ball on the shallow crosses and he gets the ball over the middle, he's got you bring him down right away. No yards after the catch, that kind of stuff. And then on third down, make sure that he's bracketed. Again, on third down, you are not completing a pass to David Bell.
Absolutely.
You're just not, unless you want to throw a screen to him, but then we're rallying to the ball and tackling it. If Milton Wright catches 9 balls on third down today, then good on you. Your guys are better than our guys. You're not beating me with David Bell. And so that's why your point is so good, Vince. You have to have a David Bell plan. He can't beat you.
Yep, absolutely. And then obviously it's minimize big plays. We've talked about that. You 4 plays over 60 yards in the first 2 games. That's 4 too many. I'm sorry. That's you have to minimize the big plays. And finally, for me, it's the fourth quarter. Guys, it all comes down to the fourth quarter. You've proven to me you can play 1, 2, and 3. right? And, the whole holding up your four fingers and then, it's the fourth quarter. Well, it's the fourth quarter, boys. Like, you need to come out to play in the fourth quarter. That's what I need to see. If they can play in the fourth quarter, this defense is going to be just fine. No question.
Yeah, it's play clean. I mean, look, again, when you're playing teams that you're better than they are, and look, the exception of David Bell, the tight end's a good player. But you've got Kyle Hamilton, you've got Jack Kaiser, you've got J.D. Bertrand.
And he needs to play better. I mean, Kyle Hamilton needs to play better.
Compared to what he was last week, for sure.
Yeah.
But to me, Vince, at the end of the day, it's just you have better players. And when you have better players, the only thing that can get you beat is a bad game plan and poor execution.
Sure.
So play clean. That's what, and those things come down to have a David Bell plan. And
well, looks like we lost Brian there randomly, but I'm sure he'll be coming back in just a second.
Nope. Some suspense.
Yeah.
On a point.
It's very suspenseful for me.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I got real big on the screen. Oh, that's me.
Yeah. I think for me, it's about play clean. You got better players. Don't give them points. If this game comes down to your defensive line dominates and then you make mistakes on the back end that allow them to turn what should have been tackles for loss or sacks or pressures into 30-yard gains, that's how Purdue can win this game. And look, it's been the recipe the first two games, right? You said it, limit big plays. If you don't give up the two big plays against Florida State, it's not a close game. If you don't give up a 66-yard gain on the first drive and a 67-yard gain on the second last drive, it's not a close game. 4 plays have completely changed our opinion of what this defensive football team is all about.
Absolutely.
Simple as that.
Yep.
Eliminate those plays, and Notre Dame will dominate Purdue on Saturday. And that's why I'm more optimistic than most, because I just have this view of they're a lot closer than people think on defense. A lot closer.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I mean, all these people comparing them to BVG and also it's just hilarious. But
it is hilarious.
But at some point in time, you got to make those people look stupid, and this is your chance to do that.
Yeah,
because hey, look, if this keeps happening week after week, and we're now in games 10, 11, 12, and that's happening, then those comparisons are going to make a lot of sense in regards to the outcome. Now, he's nothing like Brian Van Gorder in scheme, in personality, in any other way, but the outcome. Right now, the outcome looks like what Brian Van Gorder's defense looked like for 3 years, right? And so the outcome has to change. And I think that this is going to be the week where it happens. So, Vince, before we get into the predictions, we have a couple super chats.
Yes, we do.
Robert says, Brian and Vince, my dad's a first-time listener. He was the dad that was super intense Pop Warner coach, always afraid to fumble. You guys rock, go Irish. Well, I appreciate your dad's listening. And he's a former coach, to talking to 2 former coaches. So still feels weird to say that, doesn't it, Vince? For me. I've been out of coach for a while, but for you, like
yeah. I'm a former football coach.
Well, yeah, because you're still a baseball coach.
But yeah, right? it's still strange to me. I'm still, yelling things in my head when I watch even my son's football games.
Yes. But we appreciate you and your dad being part of the show, Robert. And then
Absolutely.
Mr. Adamiola jumping in the show with super chat. Appreciate you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Good luck to your boys.
He said that is his contribution to the tailgate. He said he would not be there this week, but please save me some food. Hey, where we're at. We'll have some leftovers. And if not, then I always got that grill out in the garage, So,
right.
we're good to go.
That's right.
So, Vince, it's that time, man. It's prediction time.
Prediction time, yep. Yes. And I have never been so back and forth about a prediction. I was very confident the first 2 weeks, and my predictions were nowhere obviously near what actually happened. And so, this week, I think I know, but I got no idea how, as they say. So, I still think Notre Dame's going to score, and I think I'm being a little. I'm underestimating this offense with my score, to be honest with you. I've got Notre Dame scoring 35 points. I could see them getting into the 40s depending on how things go. I think the adjustments that are going to be made offensively will turn into points. But I'm being conservative. I'm saying 35. That's approximately kind of where they've been the first 2 games. So I feel good about that number. The defensive number, I I do. I feel like the defense is right there. If they don't have the fourth quarter in the first two games, then they're hardly giving up anything points wise. 31 points in two games in the fourth quarter is just mind blowing. It just right. I have Purdue scoring 21, so I have 35-21. I very well could be underestimating both sides of the ball. To be honest with you, I think hopefully Notre Dame comes out fired up. They're in the backfield, they're in Purdue's backfield doing things that Purdue doesn't want them to do, maybe get a turnover early, allow the offense to go score, et cetera. I feel like this could be that game, but then talk to me 5 minutes later and it could be a game that goes down to the wire. So I'm all over the place with this one. I'm excited for it though. I think this is a get right game for Notre Dame. I think that I'm really looking forward to see the adjustments that are going to be made. They're better across the board. They should win this game. It should not be. I think Vegas has it at 7 points. Last time I looked, right? Somebody says we never talk about the spread. Seven's. I think it's more than 7. I think it has to be more than 7, right? But yeah, I've gotten burned in the past, so it is what it is. But I have confidence in Notre Dame. I think they're going to make the adjustments necessary. So 35-21 is my final score.
I've been kind of all week. I've seen a lot of people say, it's be a closer game. I predicted the Notre Dame Florida State game would be more competitive than people thought. I predicted 37-20. It was 38-20 at one point in time. I was feeling pretty good about that prediction. I thought that Notre Dame would beat Toledo 45-24. I said last week it was going to be a little bit more competitive early than people thought, and it was. As I break those games down and I break down Purdue, I say, the things that led me to make those predictions, I saw those in the game, but they were just too many mistakes.
Right.
You're now 3 games in. You've heard all the whispers. You've heard all the – sometimes they aren't even whispers. They're just outright screams at your program for not playing well, including coming from us when we talk about the offensive line. I feel like this is the get right game. You said last week was the get right game. I think this is the get right game. For some reason, I have just not been worried about this game, and I could look totally stupid by the time we continue the game.
We both could, believe me.
When we get to the chat, people are like, I can't believe you predicted a blowout. And I get it. I mean, based on what Notre Dame has done the first 2 weeks, I have no reason to make the prediction I'm going to make, which is I have Notre Dame winning 45-20. I don't think it's going to be a competitive game because the way I look at it, Vince, is if Notre Dame plays even 3 quarters of complete football, they blow the first 2 teams out.
Yeah.
They just do. They're close. This isn't like we've watched teams in the past. Even when they won games, you're like, there's something, I'm just not in love with this team. With this team, I'm like the Florida State game, like, how was that game even close? Like, I'm there watching, I'm like, this game's not even close. Like, Notre Dame is dominating Florida State. Yeah. They just dumb mistakes. The same thing with Toledo last week. You're like, oh my gosh, there's so many opportunities and this, that, and the other. And you just look at it and say, this game shouldn't be competitive. And I just feel like it's a Big Ten opponent. There's going to be no overlooking it. You've heard all the noise. There's been some things that have happened within this football team the first 2 weeks that I think are going to be galvanizing, or they're going to tear this team apart. I think they're going to be galvanizing. And so I'm encouraged to see what this team looks like. I really don't think it's going to be a competitive game. And I get that that's more of just a gut. That's not based off analysis.
No, I get it.
I'm just being straight honest with you. If I was going to give analysis, folks, it'd be like, hey, 31-27 Notre Dame, based on what we've seen. That would be more of a reasonable prediction based on what we've seen the first 2 weeks. That would be me putting my coaching hat on and saying, hey, here's the things. I think Notre Dame's going to do well and Purdue's going to do well. All that stuff. Everything that we said in the matchups yesterday is true. Everything that we said in the matchups on Tuesday is true and accurate based on what we've seen. But I just have this feeling, Vince, that this is the game that Notre Dame puts it all together. And you and I both know, and everybody out there knows, that the day that Notre Dame puts it together, they're just going to start smashing people. Now, that day may not come this year. Sometimes that happens. A team never plays to its potential.
Right.
I just feel like this is the game that happens.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. So
I hope we're both right.
45. What did I say? 45-20, right? I'm going 45-20. And I think it'll be a game that Notre Dame pulls away. I don't think it's going to be like they just jump all over them. It's over at halftime. That'd be nice. I think it's a game that Notre Dame is clearly the better team in the first half, but a couple mistakes allow Purdue to get a score. And, maybe it's like a 24-14 14 game at halftime, and then Notre Dame comes out in the third quarter and just puts it away. I think it'd be that more of that kind of game. But again, if Notre Dame puts it all together at the beginning of the game, they'll run Purdue off the field.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're going to. I'm just saying I think this is the game that they put it all together. So we'll see. Vince, you got a couple minutes? You want to roll through quickly and throw some of the scores up that people from some of the folks in our chat?
Yeah, let me roll back here.
And before we go, obviously, hey, hit the like button, subscribe button, notification bell. We are having our tailgate on Saturday. If you're not following me on Twitter at CoachD178, do so. The reason I say that is because I will tweet out where we end up finding a parking spot. And so we'll get there probably around 10:30, 11, probably closer to 11 to set up. It may just be me. I'm not sure if my wife's going to be able to come this weekend either. So everybody around me is not doing good, man. It's like I think they're all sick of what they've seen the first 2 weeks. So make sure you follow me on Twitter at CoachD178, and I will tell you all where we are going to be.
Why don't you grab that super chat, and then I'll start throwing up some scores here.
Jay Clampin Investments, so thank you very much for that super chat. He said, hope everyone enjoys the tailgate. Can't be there, chipping in for some food.
That's awesome.
That helps. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. I appreciate that very much. Appreciate that very much.
Awesome. Thank you
very generous. Much. Very generous.
So Kenny Moore is the first one I was able to find. It says bounce back week. ND defensive line dominates. Irish win 38-20. So similar to where you're at.
Yeah, just one more touchdown. Yeah. And I think the special teams needs to finally make an impact instead of just kind of being there.
Be nice.
They've just kind of been there the first two games.
D-Rock Irish says, I don't see a transformation of this team after fall camp in the first two games. I haven't seen it until I do. Going with my head and not my heart, Purdue 31, Notre Dame 28.
It's a little surprising.
Michael Johnson's
I think we have a super chat that's perfectly timed for post D-Rock's prediction. And Tristan Mai says, I wish everyone would stop panicking. Notre Dame will be fine. Last year struggled Louisville and Duke. Relax, go Irish. Here's the one thing I'll say about that, though, Tristan, is after they struggle with Duke and Louisville, they didn't really play anybody until November.
That's true. They are not going to have that issue.
They're not going to have 7 games to get right like they did last year. I mean, their toughest game up until North Carolina, which was late October, was what? Boston College?
Yeah.
Pitt? I mean, it's a little different schedule. They don't have that ability this year, in my opinion.
All right.
But appreciate the super chat, Tristan. But
thank you very much, Tristan. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Michael Johnson, 45-17.
He's also very close to me. I like where Michael's head's at.
Andrew thinks the defense is going to give up a ton of points. 52-42. Still Notre Dame wins by 10. They cover.
That'd be a fun game to watch.
They cover, but that's a lot of points.
He did follow up. He said later my prediction was kind of a joke.
Oh, okay.
35-24.
All right, that's fair.
Got another super chat for Mace AK. Also can't be there for the tailgate Saturday. Hope this helps a little. Let's see those IB hats during the games. Go Irish. Hey, I just want to. Awesome. I appreciate all y'all giving super chats to help out with the tailgate. But look, we've grown so much the last few months. Like,
yes,
we're already going to use the money you've given us from your support of past super chats, past shows, signing up for the message boards, things like that. So this one is it just says so much about our community events that people are doing that because they can't be there. It warms my heart and I appreciate it. But awesome. You guys have been great. You guys have been great, and that's the reason we're having this. It's just kind of trying our best to bring this community together as best we can. Got any more, Vince?
Too. Yeah, sure. Tommy Guns, 42-24, Irish all day. Irish Cubby, 38-21. Notre Dame wins.
I like this next one.
OC Kilt, ND 41. Purdue 17. Love that.
I like that.
Love that. All right, I'm going to throw this up here. Terry says, Mr. Adamiola, thank you for sending your sons to Notre Dame. I believe both will be playing on Sundays. I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. John
This would shock me. This outcome would shock me.
That's low scoring.
Yeah, that would shock me.
Low scoring game.
That would shock me.
2 for travel, 34-24, Notre Dame, I assume. Jeff Perry says 35-20, Notre Dame. David Carpenter, 41-24.
David and I are close.
Yeah,
we're pretty close on that one.
Let's see here.
Huron has one. I don't know what to make of this game. I could see 21-17 or us or something higher scoring where we lose. No idea.
I want to hit this Nathan one here real quick. He says, can't wait till Saturday. Taking my 9-year-old stepson for his birthday to his first game. Let's go
Bring him by the tailgate.
Dude, that's
awesome. Love
awesome.
to meet you guys. Yeah, that is awesome.
I'm actually taking my son to this game. It's the first time he and I have ever gone to a game together. He's gone with my father-in-law a couple times because I've always been working. But I get to go with my son for the first time ever. And
Vince asked for the day off so he could take his kid to the game. And
really looking forward to it.
I reluctantly relented and said, okay, fine.
I have a great boss. Caleb Collins, 35-31 Purdue. I think the front four provides enough pressure, and Diaco will keep the ball in front of them. Trust Braum offense a little more than Diaco doesn't work for Purdue anymore.
He's not there anymore.
I don't know if that changes your prediction, Caleb, but Diaco, is he unemployed currently? Or is he
he's an analyst somewhere, I think. But no, he's not coaching anywhere.
All right, fair enough.
David Duncan doesn't give a score, but he says Notre Dame D is up to the challenge. It's not a who has the chalk glass decision.
There we go. So I'm gonna roll.
Sounds good. I got a couple more predictions we'll work through, but
great stuff, everybody. Tomorrow, mailbag. Bring some of the questions that were over here in the chat. Bring some of them tomorrow. We will get to them first thing tomorrow, so make sure you jump in. So tomorrow, it's Friday free-for-all, baby. Looking forward to it. I will see everybody tomorrow.
Thanks, Vince. Bronx in. We got Notre Dame 2164, Notre Dame 42, Purdue 10. Bronx ND fan says, I assume this is Notre Dame, 28-14 victory. Still love the avatar, by the way. Justin Hunter says 34-31 Notre Dame. I need to see results before I'm ready for a blowout prediction. Totally fair. Totally fair. Joseph Salvatore says 38-34 Notre Dame. The Irish have to prove it to me before I can pick them winning big. Definitely understand that. Definitely understand that completely. David Duncan says, which coach recruited Carlisle Holiday? That was Bob Davie. Well, at least he was the head coach at the time. Felix Fournier says, I'm going Notre Dame 38-21. Let's see if we have any more. We do have a few more predictions. Nathan Lytle, 42-21 in favor of the Irish. Very similar to my prediction. I like it. Demetrius Rex says 21-10 Purdue win, unfortunately. I'd be shocked if Notre Dame only scores 10 points in this game. I'm not saying Purdue can't win. I mean, obviously, if you almost lost to Toledo, Purdue can beat you. But I'll be shocked if Notre Dame only scores 10 points in this game. Shocked. Brian Webb says 35-28 for Purdue. D. Beasy, 31-13 Notre Dame. And yes, I owe you. We next time you're in town, we've got to do the barbecue. So I'm sorry I missed you last week. It was kind of a crazy couple days. Tavis McKay says 38-28 in favor of Notre Dame. Irish Joe has the Irish winning 38-18. Larry Friedel says I pick same score every week, 41-16 in favor of Notre Dame. John A1 goes 34-24 for the Irish. See Christopher Jenkins. We was happy to see Kelly say we may well see a rotation for the interior line this Saturday. Light a fire under both Zeke and Madden and give Dirksen and Spindler a chance to see what they've got. Notre Dame 31, Purdue 21. Mike Padone, glad to be back listening to IB. Been on vacation last 3 weeks. I would love to go on a 3-week vacation. I'm very jealous of you, Mike. Not going to lie to you. He has the Irish winning 42-20. Maybe that's why Notre Dame's been struggling, Mike, since you've been gone this whole time. Sloaney goes 41-34. I assume that's in favor of Notre Dame. Ethan Bodner says 101-0 for Notre Dame. Actually, his real score is 49-31. Garth Cassidy says Notre Dame 24, Purdue 20. Irish for life says I am scared to pick any score. Irish win. Notre Dame 35-31. So there you go. That is it for today's prediction show. Tomorrow we'll be back at 12:30, our normal time for our Friday mailbag. We will have a podcast, a post-game show on Saturday after the game, win or lose. So we'll be back also on Saturday. So make sure you've hit the notification bell, you've subscribed, and hit the notification bell below so that you get alerted when we set up the show and let you all know what time it'll be. So I look forward to that one, and hopefully we're in a little bit better mood than we were last week. So anyway, thanks for joining us. We appreciate all of you so much. Thanks to everyone that gave a super chat. Thanks to everyone else who was here that didn't give a super chat, but you were here with us, being part of our community. We love all y'all very much. So appreciate you. We'll be talking to you again very, very soon.